right, welcome back to the Tank Me Later podcast. I am your host, Noah Rubin, and today Karan Talwar is going to join me to do a very early Roto mock. Well, maybe not very early anymore, just slightly early Roto mock, hosted by Roto Wire. So let's go ahead and get into it. Alrighty, we are going to attempt to do this right now. Current has the number one pick. Draft starting in about 20 seconds. I have the draft board pulled up, and I'm going to attempt to draft from my phone and let the draft board be on the screen. That way, it looks better for everybody watching, and I can hopefully set somewhat of a queue without Current stealing my picks. But before you're about to pick, how are you doing?
I'm well. I'm good. Excited to kick things off. 2.5 months left for the season.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, time to start. You are officially on the clock here, and you went with Victor Wembanyama. Was there any consideration for anybody else?
No, I mean, little voice in my head said Jokic, but this Wemby is just so much more exciting, and I think it's that's where he's going in the early draft only leagues I've done as well. So
Yeah, pretty much every mock I've done, he has been the number one pick. I can't think of any, but it generally comes down to Wemby or Jokic. I say that every other mock. I've done one other mock and looked at data for others, but I had the number two pick in that one. I'm picking 10th in this one. So I was able to get Jokic number two there. Are you expecting this to be anybody else other than Jokic? And it actually looks like it might end up being an auto pick. So we'll see.
yeah, if it should be Jokic in a roto setting. I'd probably have him a touch above Luka or Shea.
Yeah,
It
that's
is.
fair. I think, yeah, Roto or head to head, I would say Jokic should be going two. So no surprise that he ends up off the board here, even though it was an auto pick. Hopefully there won't be too many because it looks like there's only a couple of us in the draft room based on the little setting that they have. But SGA went number three, and Luka Doncic now going number four. So the picks are starting to speed along a little bit. Is there anything when you're doing a roto draft, like what are the main things you consider differently from a head-to-head league?
Yeah, I think the number one thing for me is my risk appetite for those injury history players goes up. Just because in a roto setting you have your bench as well, which you can use in, you can slot in players coming in, and it's a games cap. So your Kawhi Leonards and your Embiids, etc. Right? I would tend to look at them a little bit more in this setup versus head to head. And also, I think you need to get the second one for me would be you need to get your 10 starters, like solid 10 starters there. Sometimes that means they're not going for those upside players, but obviously if value presents itself, you take that. I think that would be the two main ones for me.
Yeah, definitely. I'm still newer to the Roto experience. I've had Dan Bespers on to try and talk me into it a little bit. We'll see if I end up doing a little bit more Roto this year than I have in the past. As Jason Tatum goes off the board at number 5, and when you're in a league this year, I mean, we were talking about it before I guess, messaging earlier in the day. I think it was earlier in the day, but you said that the two sweet spots for you are pick 4 or pick 9. Can you talk to me a little bit about why that is?
Yes, so pick four because it just gives you one of Wemby, Jokic, SGA, or Doncic. And I would be happy with if someone else making the decision for me. And at four, I get one of them. At nine, as we'll see in this draft, you'll have one of Tatum, Davis, Embiid, Giannis, or Halliburton. And again, at nine, also, I'm okay with that decision being made for me. If I end up with Embiid at nine, I'm okay to take that at nine. If I end up with Halliburton at nine, I mean, I'm definitely happy to do that as well. I guess I know it's coming up in your pick. I'll talk through the picks after Tatum, Davis, Embiid, and then it's up on Sloan at the moment. I think 10 is where it does get tricky because we'll see what you're thinking of. But that's where there's a couple of avenues and pathways you can go with players. So that's where for me at the moment this early stage, that's how I'm looking at the draft order.
Yeah, I think you're definitely right with it being those like kind of two sections and having those decision made for you ends up making things a little bit easier because you get an earlier pick on the back end. You mentioned Tatum, AD, and B just went, and then Giannis, and then Halliburton. Kingy got him, which is a little bit disappointing because I was definitely going to take him if he was still there. Shoot. Okay, let's see. I have back-to-back picks since this is only 10 rounds, 10 picks per round, just going through 100 picks. I'm going to go with Donovan Mitchell here with my first one. And then I'm going to go with Kevin Durant with my second one. And you mentioned like a roto strategy as far as like those guys that may have a little bit more of an injury history. And obviously, KD kind of changed the narrative a little bit last year. And Donovan Mitchell was a guy that I think only played 55 games last year. But I feel confident in both of them having one excellent per game value. I think both of them were first rounders last year, and showing a history of being able to play a ton of games. I like this start to my draft.
Yes, I like it as well. I think well, let's see what Kingy does with pairing Halley. But so far, it's been sort of a stock standard top eight, top 10 even. Even though there are a few names out there in the second round, which will be interesting now as well. Wonder, how people evaluate LaMelo Ball this year as well. That'll be interesting to see. Is he gonna slip to the third round? Is he gonna go in the second? So that should be fun. Yeah, Hallian's a bonus. It's really strong start with assists there. And I think is he potentially moving towards? See, the other thing about Roto is moving towards a punt pill is very difficult because obviously it's a Roto setting, but it is possible to win, but it's not that straightforward. So I think Kingy will have to come back with the rest of the picks and potentially get some people with points a little bit more moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, like I think Halliburton was like a 18 point per game, and Sabonis is probably around there too. So he'll definitely have to try and make that up a little bit later on, unless he is leaning into a punt points. In which case, like if there is somebody in the middle of the draft and be like, yeah, they're gonna punt points. Like Kingy is one of the few. Like he will absolutely punt points, no hesitation. So that's fun. Maybe we're just absolutely calling out his strategy, and when it gets onto the turn, every time I'll have to take a guy that's either take all the scores so he can't get them, or take the guys that would fit into his build. Either way, I'm going to try and frustrate him as much as possible. So hopefully all the auto drafters will get it figured out at the end of this round. That way, if they are auto drafting, we'll just not have to wait a minute for each pick. But after King went Sabonis, it was Anthony Edwards to be paired with Giannis, and then Steph Curry, who's playing really well for Team USA right now, despite them, I think, still losing to Serbia, paired with Embiid, and then Kyrie to go with Anthony Davis. I think that this is going to be an auto pick from Dan, so we'll have a minute to talk about it. Any surprising picks so far to you?
No, I think this is good. I want to get your thoughts on Anthony Edwards, right? Going in the second round, um, even if it was an auto pick, what additional level do you see him potentially having to move him to that, top eight, top 10 level per game?
He's an interesting one because, like, his percentages, like his field goal percentage is a little low. The free throw percentage was a little bit better this past season. I feel like he's arguably the top shooting guard in the NBA, at least top 2 or 3. But the fantasy value doesn't tend to be there, and yet he still
Mhm.
goes super early. So I think it's partially the hype factor, I would say, and also just the fact that he's young and has upside. So who knows, he might be able to take a step forward. But I think it's really just going to come down to efficiency for him. If he can make slight improvements in his percentages, really, and then maybe an extra, I mean, he was 5.1 assists, 5.4 rebounds. If he can like increase those just a tad, then he can end up returning value here as an early second rounder. I mean, in a 12 team draft, this is pick 13. So I don't know. He's interesting because I think you could get somebody better, like that's still on the board, especially at shooting guard. Like Devin Booker's still there, and I think he had a better
Mhm.
fantasy season last year. I think it is about preference, it is about team build, but I don't know. He's an interesting guy that consistently goes pretty early in drafts.
The aura of Anthony Edwards is undefeated.
Wait, say that again?
The aura of Anthony Edwards is undefeated.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
Well, when that becomes a category, let me know.
okay, so it's up on me. I did want Trey Young, so that's gone. Kawhi there in a roto setting is fine as well. So I am looking into sort of fortifying my assists because, as we know, assists get harder to come by. So there are a couple of options for me. There's Dame I'm looking at. James Harden, I think, has a chance to get back to it, and then LaMelo Ball. So I'm gonna go with Dame here, and then I'm gonna come back with. This is the one I think. No, I think I'm going to take LaMelo over here.
Nice. Interesting. Because with the other mock I did, I got him. I guess it was beginning of the third round. So it would have been, I think it was beginning of the third round because I picked early. Yeah. So beginning of the third round. So this is just a few spots ahead of it. But I mean, you could see him slide a good bit further if people are scared off by the injuries. Is that something that worries you at all?
I mean, he did have a couple of seasons ago. He did have a 70 game plus season, and
Mm-hmm.
I think coming into this season, Charlotte's in a better position as well with what they've done for the team. And for me, the way I look at it in Roto is that even if there's shenanigans in it, even if there's towards the end of the season there's injuries etc. which pop up due to 2025's draft class being loaded, even if I get 60 games out of him and the rest of it can be replaced, I would be okay with that outcome. And I think he does have a level to go up in his fantasy game as well, especially on scoring. And if that comes up, then he'd be for me. I look at him at good value at this stage.
Yeah. No, I like the pick. I'm not you explained it well, but I'm definitely somebody that's looking to get LaMelo in drafts this year. Just reviewing some of the picks that have happened since I guess we last talked about it. Steph, Kyrie, and then Chet Holmgren, Scotty Barnes, Trey Young, Kawhi. Then you went Damon LaMelo, and then James Harden and LeBron James. So, and then now Alperen Sengun and Devin Booker have just gone, which I surprised a little bit by the Devin Booker slide, which is something I was mentioning a little bit when I was talking about Anthony Edwards. It was like, hey, there's another shooting guard. He's going over around, or I guess over a round later, with Tyrese Maxey just now going right after him. Any of these picks like standing out to you so far? Anything like it's too early, too late?
So far, it's going per sort of ADP. As you're thinking about your pick, what I am keen to see this year is how Tyus Jones's addition to Phoenix, how that impacts Booker's assists, how that impacts Beal's assists, and even Durant's assists. Um, because he's apparently been promised a starting job there, right? And if he is starting, then that does take the top off a little bit of these players, Devin Booker in particular, because a lot of his value last year was coming in those assists. So that's something to keep note of and for me to see. And the other one, as the next person who's made his pick with Maxi, is looking at that sort of Maxi Paul George, who takes the sort of bigger hit there, and then how that sort of works in with Embiid as well. Do we see a 35-point scoring Embiid again, or is it lesser? So I think those are some of the considerations that I would have. But other than that, I think it's gone sort of straightforward.
Yeah, I agree. Not too many super surprising picks. Maybe a few of these guys have slid a little bit further than I probably would have let them,
Mm.
such as a guy like Booker and Markkinen just going in the third round. Deciding here, three guys in my queue. I was hoping that Kingy would take one of them. So I'm going to start with Jalen Johnson, just because I want to make sure I get him, and then decide between these two guards. I'm going to go DeJounte Murray. No, I'm not. I'm going to go De'Aaron Fox. I'm going to do it. So I'm Jalen Johnson's not a great free throw shooter. De'Aaron Fox is pretty bad as a free throw shooter for a guard, but I feel like Donovan Mitchell and Kevin Durant will help even that out. And I've gotten okay. And then DeJounte was my other guy, so thanks, Key. A lot of points early on between Fox, Mitchell, KD. A good bit of 3-pointers as well. I'm definitely going to have to figure something out with my bigs over the next handful of rounds, but I'm pretty surprised that Fox was, pick 31. I think that's a pretty decent slide for him, considering I've seen him go about a round earlier than that in other drafts. What do you think about Fox?
I like that as well. I think I in terms of Dame, LaMelo, and Harden were the top three I was looking at, but after that was Fox and LeBron, right? That's where I was looking at it that time as well. So for me, um, it'll be interesting how DeRozan impacts him, but I think you know what you're getting with Fox, and if he can get his free throws up a little bit, then you know you've obviously there's an additional level there as well because he did improve his 3-point shooting last year, so you know that's a barometer for him to potentially improve that. After that, obviously DeJounte and then Paul George. Paul George, obviously Maxi went before Paul George. I've seen that the other way around in some draft holdings as well. I would lean a little bit more in my projections. I haven't yet fully finished them, but where I'm leaning towards, I think Maxi comes out slightly higher because of the assists. And then obviously Carl Towns, and then Derek White, and then Adebayo is gone. What do you think of Derek White then? I know KP is out for the first few months, but what do you think of him overall there?
Yeah, obviously I was all on the Derek White hype train entering the last season, and I'm still like expecting him to be very good. I guess just taking him with, it's pick 35. I get nervous that that's basically taking away all of his upside because I don't think that he's taking another step forward statistically this upcoming season. Like I did, if he does, then like I don't know. I don't know what you do with it because he obviously did a lot better last year than pretty much everyone was expecting. And I'm expecting him to continue to be very solid, like borderline top 50, maybe just outside the top 50, I think is a pretty realistic expectation. So I have no problem taking him. I think he's a very helpful player, but I think this is probably the earliest that I would take him. That was pick 35. So I don't know. Did you think 35 was good, or would you have preferred to get him a little bit? I guess everyone would prefer to get him a little bit later, but is 35 somewhere you would have taken him?
I think for me, I would have liked a few more rounds later because, as you said, the upside at this point, you're kind of taking it away. But obviously, who knows with KP being out, he does have those few months of maybe top 30, top 40 value. As my pick comes up,
Yeah.
I did want Mobley. Mobley's gone, so now I'm gonna take Cade here.
Nice.
And then this is just obviously taking all those guard stats in the second, third, fourth pick, and then now coming back. This is where in Roto I'm looking at this as an option here. I'm going to take Jimmy Butler. Just because again, and the injury aspect in Rotos is slightly sort of the risk is nullified as we talked about earlier on. And I feel that at this level in round 5 with Butler, even if you look at his sort of last year's numbers, there's a possibility that he gets back to that, which beats this number. And it was a down year for him. The other players I had in consideration here, I was looking at Desmond Bain, I was looking at Jamal Murray, I was looking at and Morant as well. These three, in terms of guards, is what I was looking at. Then in terms of what you were mentioning earlier as well, bigs. Even I don't have any bigs aside from Wemby. So, but I do feel like in the draft onlys I've done, we'll get to this later on. There is value late round picks as well. I know this draft is only 10 picks just for the sake of the top 100 rankings, but there is value in later rounds. You're seeing Mitchell Robinson's slide. You're seeing obviously Alex Sarr given his summer league. You're seeing all of that happen. So I feel like there is some value there. And after that, Jalen Williams, Bain, Siakam, and Morant, as you're thinking about your pick.
Yeah, we'll quickly go back because I know we didn't talk, I guess, much about the end of the third round, most of the fourth round. So after Booker went Maxey, Lowry Markkinen, Jalen Brunson, Jaren Jackson. And then I finished up round 3 with Jalen Johnson, kicked it off with Fox, and then DeJounte Murray, Paul George, Karl Anthony Towns, Derek White, Bam Adebayo, Paolo Banchero, Evan Mobley, Fred VanVleet, and then you wrapped it up with Cade Cunningham. And then round 5 has been Jimmy Butler, Jalen Williams, Desmond Bain, Pascal Siakam, John Morant, Miles Turner, Franz Wagner, and Jamal Murray. I'm up right after Kingy picks, and a lot of the guys that I kind of like to get in this range are now gone. So thanks. I might have to do what I don't like to do and take a big here in like this 5th and 6th round. I guess it kind of depends on what Kingy does. Okay, so he went Darius Garland. So that is good for me because I didn't want to take a guard. I think what I'll do is, for the sake of getting a quote unquote big that has center eligibility for some reason, I'm going to go with Zion Williamson. I think that this is pretty good value for him. Um, Again, I'm taking another guy that's probably going to hurt my free throw percentage, so I'm going to have to try and fix that a little bit in the later rounds. But I think that definitely helps me again get another really good score. Helps field goal percentage, which should have already been pretty decent. And now I need to get. I'll just get another big. I don't love this pick, but I'm going to do it because I feel like he fits a good bit of what I need, and that's Jalen Duren. Just because of the fact that I have a number of solid rebounders, but I don't have anybody that's like a double-double guy. So I'm happy to get Jalen Duren in this instance. More often than not, I feel like this is a little bit early for him, but I think this fits my team pretty well. So I'm going to have to figure out a shot blocker with one of my last 4 picks. And I mean, that's going to be one of my keys. But how do you feel about Zion and Jalen Duren?
Zion was in my thoughts when I took Butler as well, real close to it. And again, him also, I feel that he has another level to go in his game as well. His scoring is another thing that could come up. Uh, we don't even want to talk about the defensive stats, the legendary defensive stats, even if we assume they're never coming back. But I think scoring is a big one for him. Interesting with that team at the moment. I think there's too many mouths to feed right now. I mean, they haven't traded away Ingram, so he's there, and
Yeah.
TJ is there, and then obviously Trey Murphy, and then you got to see how all of that fits together. But if they do move Ingram, then obviously his value even goes higher than that. So I like it.
Yeah. And then Kingy, I don't think was happy about either that pick or Zion. I'm not entirely sure. And then he went Nick Claxton, and then Jaylen Brown went Jarrett Allen, Tobias Harris from a Detroit Pistons fan. Love to see that. And then Emmanuel Quickly, who was a guy that I was considering had I not already gone. I guess I didn't go that guard heavy. It was as guard heavy as I thought I did. I guess I could have gone Emmanuel Quickly there, but I'm glad I got some players with center eligibility. But I'm not alone in thinking that he's going to have a big season. Are you expecting similar from Quickly?
Yes, definitely. I think he's going to be the second option, maybe sometimes even the first option on that offense. Even though Barrett is there as well, but he had such a strong finish to the season. I think he was top 50 so after Feb onwards, and I'm bullish on him for this year as well. And I think getting him in round 6 is good. I mean, I've seen him go in round 4, round 5 as well in some of the draft onlys.
Yeah. And then right after him, both Mikhail and Miles Bridges were the next 2 picks. I know you mentioned that you were considering Jamal Murray on the turn. He went late in round 5.
Yeah.
What makes you, I guess, why do you like Jamal Murray? Because I think I'm probably a little bit lower on him than maybe consensus, just off the fact that he usually plays better in the playoffs than he does in the regular season. The injury history isn't ideal, and perhaps a little bit of it is, and this shouldn't be what's poisoning my mind on him, but the performance in the I'll continue to talk about other things. We'll circle back to Jamal Murray. It's your pick, so we'll talk about that first.
Yeah, so the 2 Bridges have gone and Gobert is gone. I need to get some bigs now. So I think DeAndre Ayton is one I'm gonna take, and then I'm gonna think about my second pick. So this is 7th round. Porzingis is out for 2 months. This is probably I don't know if I'll have to see more sort of ADP data come in and do more of these mocks, but I feel like in round 7 I want to take that risk because just given that there's not so many good big men available at this point. So I'm going to take Aiton for sure, and then I'm going to come back with I'm going to take Porzingis here. I think the risk here for me would be okay. I mean, I would have liked to get him a little bit later, but it's just getting the bigs are just flying off.
Yeah, I agree. Porzingis is definitely a guy that he's not on a do not draft list, but I feel like he's going to go earlier than I'm willing to take him in most cases. But I feel like where you got him is pretty good. Getting him pick 61. I don't think that that's too early, in my opinion. I'm not sure where you've seen him. Is this the first time you've taken him in between your mocks and draft only leagues? Is this the first time you've gotten Porzingis?
Yes, this is the first time I've taken him because he's usually gone earlier. He's usually gone in like
Right.
round 6, round 5. Um, Ideally, I would have liked to take him like outside the top, maybe top 8 or 9 picks. Like if I can get him in round 10, but it's likely you're not going to get that option. Yeah. So your question earlier about Jamal Murray, I think
Yeah.
it just all depends on Westbrook's role. Like how are they going to use Westbrook? I doubt he starts. I think they probably give that first crack to Christian Braun. But if he does start or if he does play a lot with Murray, that takes some of Murray's assist potential away. So then, in that case, I'll have to look at the preseason to see how Denver's using him, and then potentially move my sort of projection of Jamal Murray. But at the moment, I like him because of his assists, his threes, his scoring as well that comes in. And last year he had a bit of a uptick in his defensive stats as well. I'm not sure if that stakes, but the rest of it is what I do like about him.
Yeah. And one pick after Jamal Murray was Darius Garland by Kingy. I'm pretty optimistic that he's going to be better than he was last season, where he was outside the top 100. I don't remember where I took him in the other mock that I did, but it was either around 4 or 5. I'm expecting him to not just be like, oh, he's better than last year, because like that shouldn't be that hard for him to do. But I mean, how are you expecting Garland's season to kind of turn out?
I had a lot of Garland stocks last year in many leagues, so I was bullish on him last year
Yikes.
as well. And I think after, yeah, I think his jaw injury really did set him back. And I think this year is going to be a bounce back as well. The one thing that I want to keep in mind, and keep sort of when preseason starts to have a look at that is that how the new coach is going to be using their sort of rotations and the minutes because Kenny Atkinson comes from a school of thought wherein I think he doesn't stretch his players out to those 35,
Mm.
36 minute marks. So that's something I'm going to be looking at a little bit more closely. But yeah, he's great for threes, points, assists, steals. It's a really good pick there, especially pairing him up with DeJounte Murray and Tyrese Halliburton.
Yeah, no, that's a good point about the minutes that I honestly haven't thought much about. Is the fact that it's a new coaching staff, so it's definitely something that could end up being a factor, something to consider with all the Cavs guys as I draft Donovan Mitchell in the top 10. But hopefully, I mean, I'm sure Donovan Mitchell's still gonna get his no matter what. One of the picks that just happened. So after you went Porzingis, it went CJ McCollum, Devin Vassell, Tyler Hero, Jabari Smith, Brooke Lopez, Drew Holiday, and Kobe White. So I think Kobe White is generally going earlier than this. And he ended up just being an auto pick. I don't know if you saw the quote about Josh Giddey being like the team's point guard next season. Do you think that scares people away from Kobe White? Like, are you thinking it's going to be not a full on fall off year from Kobe White, but like Zach LaVine's still there as well? Like, do you think Kobe White ends up taking a pretty decent step back?
As currently constructed in that roster, yes, right. With Zach LaVine coming back, Giddy coming in, they're gonna give some sort of let's see what happens with Lonzo Ball as well. I'm not sure if he comes back, but if he comes back, then it's even more of a reason to fade Kobe White. So I'll be really keen to see what happens in preseason, but I do not see him having that sort of free range that he did last year, playing 37, 38 minutes at times and getting all the shots he wanted. So I don't see that happening. And in which case, yeah, I would be fading him, given the information we have now. Oh, I wanted Mark Williams.
Yeah, I needed some sort of player that can block shots, so I had to go with that there. You know what? I'll do a little bit of a slightly risky pick, and I will go with Josh Giddey here simply because of that quote that I was just telling you about, where they're going to have him play point guard. So I'm expecting him to be better this season than he was last year. That also gets me some later ish round assists because I mean, De'Aaron Fox is, I think, my top assist guy based on numbers last season. But my first 5 picks are all halfway decent to pretty good at assists, but I don't have like a true dime dropper. So I think Josh Giddey should be able to do that this upcoming season. Plus, get some of the other guys I was looking at was Brandon Miller. I don't want to go 2 Hornets in a row. Another guy was DeMar DeRozan. I was like, I already have De'Aaron Fox. Let's try and get some players from different teams, just for the sake of having a little bit of fun. And just to recap, after Kobe White, Kingy went Trey Murphy. I went Mark Williams and Josh Giddey. Are you? I guess you mentioned you wanted Mark Williams. Are you at all worried about his back? Because I think when I've talked about it with Kingy, I'm a little bit nervous about it, but I mean, not so nervous that I'm not going to take him at pick 70.
Same. That's my thought on it. I'm again, preseason would tell us a lot if he's playing those games, how he's looking there. Yeah, and then after that we could take a call potentially. We want to move him down a couple of slots. But Giddy is the one I'm really interested in as well. And Giddy, I think would it surprise anyone if he comes out 18, 7 and 7 with a steal, on average, above average efficiency, so I think there's a bounce back in Giddy for this year. And I think you could potentially get him I mean, I know this is a redraft and this is a roto, but you could potentially get him at a discount for in Dynasty as well at the moment. And I'm really high on Josh Giddy for this year.
Yeah, I mean, last year was obviously a disaster. I'm expecting him to be significantly better this year. So hopefully, I think the efficiency is the biggest question mark to me, because I think decent points and then rebounds and assists are going to be the main things. Not really expecting much defensively, which is probably something I need to focus on with my last 2 picks. But the efficiency is probably going to be the number one question for me. The next few picks: Anthony Simons, DeMar DeRozan, Nikola Vucevic, and Alex Caruso. As Dan Titus's time is about to run out to see him pick or get Cam Thomas. What do you think about Cam Thomas? I talked with Kingy about him a little bit the other day. Obviously, he's going to get you a ton of points, and getting that later in this draft is a good thing. But do you think he can kind of have a little bit of an uptick with his playmaking or efficiency, or maybe defensively, something to give him a little bit more value in fantasy?
Yeah, I think steals and his assists were, I think, 2.9 last year. I just saw that. So if they give him a little bit more chance of ball handling, with obviously, we have to see what happens with Ben Simmons as well, their point guard and shooters there as well. I think that there's a chance for him to get that up a little bit, potentially his steals as well. If he can just get it up from what was it, 0.7 to even 1, that's a big difference. I think one thing again, I would be looking to, if I had him in a dynasty, for example, I'd be looking to sell high after this year, because this is probably like a really, really bumper year coming up for him. But even in redraft, like if after the first month Cam Thomas is averaging 30 and 5, for a 4-week stretch, and you can sell him, I'd be looking at that a little bit more, with the idea of drafting him as well. So you got to know your league, right? Who's going to be the one who falls and who thinks that, actually points and Cam Thomas, and then draft him accordingly. So yeah, I think he's going to have a better year than last year for sure.
Yeah, and it should be fun, and probably the only fun thing going on in Brooklyn. The next 2 picks after that: Jonathan Kuminga, Julius Randle, and we have one more pick before you are back on the clock for 2 of them. What are you kind of thinking right here?
Zach LaVine is fallen a little bit, I feel, even though we haven't seen him in a while. Brandon Ingram has fallen as well, so I think that's where I'm sort of leaning at the moment. Bradley Beal, Austin Reeves, to get some of that scoring in at the moment, but I think I need to take LaVine here. And coming back, just depends on what happens with Ingram, but I think I'll have Ingram over Bradley Beal here, just to sort of fortify that scoring here as well. And I got those bigs earlier on, so that sort of covers that. And my last pick, I'll probably be aiming for a big as well, whether it's a rookie or whether it's something, for specialists of rebounds and blocks.
That's I think that's incredible value at pick 80 and pick 81. 2 guys that are probably, I don't remember numbers off the top of my head, but like probably going in like the 50s last year. And obviously disappointing seasons. Who knows who Brandon Ingram is going to be suiting up for to start next season? Maybe he's still in New Orleans. LaVine could get traded as well. But I still think just getting them at 80 and 81 is pretty insane value. And then after went D'Angelo Russell, And then we'll have, 17 more picks. Daniel Gafford just went. I think just as a quick look back, any of the other picks that we haven't talked about yet, anything standing out to you at this point?
Gafford, I'm keen to hear what you think of him because Lively is there, and Lively was considerably better than him down the stretch during the playoffs as well. And then I think they have a lot more of stocks vested in Lively's success versus Gafford's success. So, how are you viewing the Gafford Lively situation? Do you think it's going to be a timeshare? In which case, like, who do you prefer? If it's not a timeshare, then how are you viewing it at the moment?
I do think it's going to be a timeshare. I still think both guys are going to be pretty solid just off the sense that they're going to shoot an insanely high percentage. The fact that they're playing alongside each other, they can be more aggressive to block shots. So if somebody gets in foul trouble, it's no big deal because the team still has the other guy. So they're able to be aggressive. And I think rebounds should be pretty solid in 24 minutes. I can see them both getting at least close to 10 per game. Maybe closer to like 8 is more realistic, but still like that's pretty good. So the minutes split will be interesting. I think I'd lean towards Lively as the starter. Either way, I do think both guys see 20 plus minutes per game. So I have no issue going Gafford over Lively. I think I would prefer Lively over Gafford. But if somebody was to swing it the other way, like cool. Like I get it. If that's your guy, go for it. I think I would probably prefer Lively in this case though.
Brandon Miller after that. So that I think that's incredible value in terms of round 9 at the moment. I know there's LaMelo's back, and I know that they obviously have to develop Salon as well. But this is a good spot to get him in round 9.
Yeah, I agree. After you picked, I was starting to add players to the queue, and I added both Brandon Miller and OG Anunoby, who were the last 2 picks, because getting them at 84 and 85 is just once again incredible value. Slipping a little bit too much for my liking, even though OG's numbers did kind of go down a little bit after the trade, and adding in Mikal Bridges isn't going to help him at all. I still think that, he'll probably see a ton of minutes and be able to get a good amount of steals. So happy to get him in round 9, even though this was an auto pick, but still, I think that was quite the slide for OG and Brandon Miller. As the next 2 picks after them, Mike Conley and Terry Rozier have just gone. 2 more picks until I'm up for my last 2. And let me see. So Austin Reeves just went. I still have 3 guys in my queue, which is excellent and Keeney's not going to take them. So that definitely makes things hard for me. I'm going to go, because I haven't really gotten anybody that's like really good at steals. Like I've gotten some like decent steals. Nobody elite. I'm going to get Herb Jones to help with that. And then just making it hard for me. I was gonna just take one between the Kongwu and Lively, whoever was available, but they're both there. So I'm gonna go with the Kongwu just to stay biased to my team. That's the only reason I'm gonna go Kongwu over Lively. But yeah, I think both guys have an argument to have gone by now. I'm a little bit surprised that they haven't. We'll see. Maybe one of them will make it back to, or I guess not one of them. Maybe Lively will make it back to you.
Yes, no, I love the Kongwu pick, and I also like what Kingy's done with Hartenstein. That is, I think he definitely gets more usage in OKC. He 25 minutes of him and he beats this. Is what I project him. And Okongwu as well. He's always usually been a per minute monster, but obviously last year was a little bit of a down year in that sense. But
yeah,
let's see what happens with Capella. Is this the final? Is this the year where they're sort of like completely doing the trade that they've been rumored to do for many years? But even if not, I feel in 22 minutes he gets this number easily.
Yeah, I'm less optimistic about a trade at this point. I thought it was going to be like a sure thing, but now I just feel like Okongwu is just going to start and Capella is just going to play 20 minutes per game off the bench. So Okongwu will probably still be capped at like 28 minutes per game. Maybe he can get to 30 if they play both of them together. Because I do still think Clint Capella is a very good rebounder and a serviceable defender. I just think what Okongwu is able to do is he's a little bit more versatile offensively, which I think will be fit well next to Trae Young and be pretty fun. So hopefully he'll be able to start and play enough minutes for this to be able to return value. But just reviewing the picks after Kingy went Hartenstein, I went Herb Jones, Okongwu, and then he went Chris Paul. Good value there to get some late assists. And then Kyle Kuzma, Cam Johnson, Jalen Green, and Bradley Beal. And then Chris Middleton just went. I think Bradley Beal is, I mean, obviously it's a very different situation in Phoenix than Washington a couple of years ago, but seeing Bradley Beal go in the 10th round just a few years after being a first rounder is pretty interesting to see. We'll go ahead and talk about your final pick, who you might be considering, as there's 2 picks before that. Hopefully neither of them are listening in and stealing your pick.
I love that Bradley Beal pick. As I was mentioning in my round 9 pick, he was right up there with Brandon Ingram. So I think that's incredible value, even if his assists are shaved off a little bit. I feel like he returns this. Now for me, assuming I get this, I'm actually there's 2 people in my queue, so I'm definitely going to get one of them. And who I'm leaning in towards is Jordan Poole. In round 10, I mean, we all know that he didn't perform up to his ADP last year. But given the situation right now in DC, even though Brogdon's there and Bub is there is a chance that he could start at the 1, he could start at the 2. And at pick 100, I'm okay to take that risk in a Roto league, because if it works out, he could beat this spot by 2030. If it doesn't, then obviously there's in a 100-person 100 roster size league, there's going to be people on the wire as well.
Definitely, and I don't have any issues with taking Jordan Poole around pick 100, considering sometimes he was going in 4th or 5th round generally last season. So wrapping that up, after Bradley Beal went Middleton, Bogdan Bogdanovic, who is currently, I won't say lighting up, but he's playing well against Team USA, and then Tyus Jones. Then you wrapped up with Jordan Poole. So yeah, that is the draft. That is 100 picks. We will quickly just kind of break down our teams. I know we've already talked through each pick, but just overall, how do you feel about the team you just drafted?
Yeah, I feel obviously this is the first one I got number 1 pick, and this is the first league I've had Wemby in a mock as well. So I'm really excited about that. Getting Dame and LaMelo over there to sort of shore up those assists and threes as they sort of go a little bit more scarce towards the later part of the rounds. Then Cade, who I feel like, given that the Detroit team has put in a lot of good veterans there, more shooters there, I think he's in for a good year. Jimmy Butler there in round 5. Then Ayton and Porzingis, because Big Switch is running out and I needed to sort of get something there, and that's where Porzingis came in. And Zach LaVine and Brandon Ingram, as you highlighted earlier, they were top 50-ish guys last year. So if they can regain some of that form, that scoring is really, really useful, coupled with, rebounds and assists for them as well. And Jordan Poole being sort of that lottery ticket, if he can get 20 to 30 spots of value here, then I'm happy with that.
Yeah, no, I like it a lot. I went obviously Mitchell, KD to start. Happy to get 2 well-rounded superstars to start off the draft. Hopefully they're healthy. Same thing with Jalen Johnson. Hopefully he's healthy, because he had a really good year last year. I'm expecting him to take at least another step, maybe not a full leap, but another step forward this year. De'Aaron Fox, felt that was a good value pick. Because I would expect him to go about 10 so picks earlier. So happy about that. Zion, I don't love drafting Zion. And then right after that, I don't love drafting Jalen Duren, but I felt like it was good value for Zion. And then Jalen Duren fit what my team needed. Mark Williams to get blocks, Josh Giddey to get assists, Herb Jones to get steals. And then Okongwu is my quote unquote upside pick that if he's starting and playing 28 to 30 minutes per game, he has top 50 upside. So he would crush this. Obviously, it's a little bit of a risk with Trae Young and the Hawks both just loving Clint Capella so much, but hopefully he'll play enough to return value here. We won't go through every team, but I did want to point out that Kingy finally did get a really good score with Anthony Simons in round 8. And I think there's a legitimate chance that his team of Tyrese Halliburton, Domantas Sabonis, Jaren Jackson Jr., DeJounte Murray, Darius Garland, Nick Claxton, Trey Murphy, Anthony Simons, Hartenstein, and Chris Paul, that Simons could realistically be the only 20-point per game scorer, with Halliburton, Sabonis, DeJounte, and Darius Garland all averaging 18 or 19. And actually, Jaren Jackson Jr. also averaging 18 or 19. I think that would be a pretty funny scenario. But yeah, that'll do it for this. Karan, thanks for joining me. And then thanks to RotoWire for hosting this mock. Do you have any content that we should be on the lookout for with the season starting in, I guess, 2.5 months? What's coming up for you?
Yeah, so follow me on Twitter, obviously at Karan_Talwar27. Then I got my site Switchscribe, in which I'm pushing out content, more content as the season comes in. Just did a couple of posts on Dynasty. And then now we're looking at moving into my projections, and I'm going to be posting out sort of punt guides for redraft season, and for as Yahoo opens up their leagues as well. I think it's this week that they're opening up their leagues. It should be fun. This is the fun stretch coming up, and as the drafts ramp up, so I'm excited.
Yeah, and I think based on keeping up with Dan Titus's tweets that Yahoo opened up leagues or is opening up leagues today, but it's going to be a couple more weeks before they open up mock draft lobbies again. But I'm sure we'll still host some mocks on Yahoo by just creating leagues and then deleting them after. But again, thank you for joining me, Karan, and we'll definitely have you back before the season starts again. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Take Me Later podcast, and I will see you guys next time.
You just listened to another episode from the Fantasy Basketball International Podcast Network. Thanks for joining us. And for more information about joining our community, please check out our website at fbibasketball.com.